quick overview, and which was an excellent talk. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to invite my colleague and all-time friend and member of our faculty and department, Professor Bernard Epel, from the Department of Molecular Biology and Ecology of Plants. Bernie got his BSc in Physics and Math from Wayne State University, MSc in Plant Physiology, University of Maryland, and PhD from UC San Diego. Can you listen to me? Can you hear me? He has been a visiting professor in UC San Diego, Michigan State, UC Berkeley, Scripps Research Institute, and the Danforth Plant Research Center. His major interest was to understand how plant cells communicate with each other, although they have cell walls, and this brought him to study movement of viruses through plasmodesmata, which are trans-wall tunnels that interconnect the cells and facilitate movement of molecules of various sizes. His studies show that the plasmodesma conductivity is under developmental control, and it can affect the movement of viruses and therefore disease control. He was the founding director of the Manna Center for Plant Biosciences and initiated the first course on bioethics in the Faculty of Life Sciences in Tel Aviv University. His talk will be about ethical concerns related to the production and availability of nutritious food in a dichotomous world of scarcity and plenty. Baruch Toda. Thank you.
Thank you, Adina. Probably wonder what someone who's working with viruses and plasmodesmata is talking about ethics in food security. Well, it all started off with the Manna Center, where the donors were very much concerned with the effect of modern biology and biotechnology and society, and whether the students had an understanding of the bioethical ramifications of the work that they were doing. And so I went into the volunteer to teach the course on bioethics, and now Danny has asked me to give a talk about some of the bioethical considerations of food security. The problem is that we're living in a society where we're more or less really hedonistic. We think ourselves as living under ethical systems, but most of us are very hedonistic. And as hedonists, we might say, am I my brother's keeper? Should we really be concerned with the needs of the developing world? We're generally concerned with ourselves, and the question is, should we go out and look at the needs of the other world? And as we heard, the university has limited resources, and the question is, should we be also concerned about the needs of the developing world? And if yes, to what degree and how should we be involved? Well, the important point is that we're living in a world where the population is exploding. Right? 300 years ago, we were talking a population of 1 billion. In 1960, only 50 years ago, we had 3 billion. Just recently, we passed the 7 billion mark. And within less than 40 years, we're probably going to go to 9 billion. So how are we going to be able to deal with this tremendous increase in the population and be able to feed them? So we've got good news, we have some bad news. The good news is that when we reach about 2050, the population should stabilize. We should have probably no more increase, and if the projections are right, we should be seeing a decrease in the population. But the bad news is that up till 2050, we're going to have to be able to feed 2 billion more people. If not, we're going to see starvation and malnutrition. So how are we going to be able to handle these problems of 2 more billion people in the world? Well, what's been great is that since 1960, when the population reached 4 billion, we saw a tremendous change in the agricultural technology, and productivity increased tremendously. We had a population increase of about 2.3, from 3 to 7 billion. Grain production, though, went up by 4.5-fold, 4,500%. 8% increase in productivity, and the yields per acre also increased by about 3.5-fold. So this gave us the possibility to feed the tremendous increase in the population. Otherwise, we would be facing starvation. And as we heard, the Green Revolution made this possible. The development of high-yield grains of wheat and rice, and then the intensive use of fertilizers, waters, and pesticides. All of these things gave us the possibility of having major increase in yields with very little increase in use of land. But what was surprising is even though most of the population now had caloric sufficiency, there was a problem of nutritional sufficiency. Even though we were able to feed most of the population, they weren't healthier. And especially if we're looking in the Western world, where we really have plenty, we see problems of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and even in the Western world, vitamin and mineral nutrition. But if we're looking at the developing world, the problems there are tremendous. Malnutrition, even though almost most of the third world, the developing world, does have sufficient calories, 160 million children are lacking vitamin A, and this is leading to blindness in 500,000. 1 million die because of their weak immune system, and half of the poor children of the world have iron deficiencies. And because of iron deficiency also in the adult population, 500 million women have major problems of iron deficiency, and 60,000 of them are dying every year during pregnancy due to the problems of iron deficiency and also iodide and folic acid deficiency during pregnancy, which results in 18 million babies having mental impairment, lower IQs. Tremendous problems in the developing world with malnutrition. We also, I'm just going to have a few words, but I'm not going to talk much about the developed world, but here also we have nutritional deficiencies, and this is mainly due to the lack of consumption, not in Israel, but in, say, the United States, and Europe, of fruits and vegetables. Here in Israel, thank God, we have a population that has ample access to fruits and vegetables, but in the United States, and especially in poor areas, the average diet is made up of fats, sugars, and carbohydrates, and many of these are the refined sugars and carbohydrates and saturated fats, and almost no access to vitamins, to vegetables, fruits and vegetables. And so we're having tremendous problems of disease due to poor nutrition and poor diets. So we come back to the question, are we our brother's keeper? And I say yes, we certainly are. We're in a world now that is interconnected. Everything is affecting everything else. We see tremendous problems that are affecting, from one part of the world, it's affecting the rest of us. And we all have to be concerned. We are one world. People who once we lived in our shtetl, in our little towns, our ethical consideration was for our families and for our town. But now we have to be concerned with the whole world. We are all brothers throughout the world, and we have to look after the others because it's going to come back to us if not. This is the part of ethics. We have to develop a society which is stable, and we have the desire also to see our brothers having a good life. This is an ethical imperative. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So there are lots of different approaches, different ideologies. And the question is which approach is correct. And there are lots of people who have different ways they say. So, well, okay, if we have nutritional problems, let's give vitamins and mineral supplements. If you can do it, you can get the infrastructure for getting it to the people, fine, it helps. Educate mothers and families about nutrition. That works maybe in the West, and actually it isn't. It's very hard to convince people that they should go and buy fruits and vegetables when the question is, do I want to buy fruits and vegetables, or do I want another television, or do I want a car? And they will, even though they know they should be feeding their children nutritional food, they'll buy others. So education, it's a good idea if it can work, And generally in the third world, it's a problem. It's how do you get to the people, how do you educate them? And when they're concerned mainly with getting a cell phone or other things, are they really going to, whether they can, whether the education is going to help. But we have to try as much as possible. Give them a diversified diet. Again, we can say this easily in our country. We have everything that we need, fruits, vegetables, whatever. A family that has to use most of its money to buy rice, and there's no mango around, they're going to have a problem of diversifying their diet. They want to get enough calories in, they want to grow enough rice or whatever it is to feed their families, the basics. And diversifying the diet is a great idea, and if you can do it in some places it's being done, it works. But in most cases it's almost impossible for many of these people to diversify their diets. Another possibility is developing new varieties of crops with increased nutritional qualities. This is being done. This is the dream, I think, of many of us here in the universities, is to be able to develop plants with better nutritional qualities, especially the basic commodities that people eat, rice, wheat, cassava, various things like this, that they will have enhanced nutritional properties, so that you don't have to educate them, that they will be able to eat, get all of their nutritions in the basic commodities that they're used to eating. But this is the question is how are we going to do it? And one is through classical breeding, and the other is possibly through genetic engineering. All these, I think we should not say one is the right one. All have to be done. We have to work to increase the nutritional quality of the food by every method possible. So this is a must, and we must do everything we can to do this. This we can start doing today. We have all the tools available, and we have to work at it. But what about yield? Today we can possibly increase. It's a tremendous job, but we're talking about in another 20, 30, 40 years, 2 more billion people that we have to feed. So this is going to demand that we develop, that we give increased yields. And what's important is that we don't want to start using non-developed lands. We have very little forests, waterlands, parks, nature preserves. We don't want to be able to, we don't want to have to exploit them. We want to conserve nature. We're custodians of nature, and we have to try to conserve and preserve it. And here the question is it possible? Can we do that? Because we have to feed the people. This is a must. And so we want to be able, one of the big questions is, can we do both? To do this, we have to continue the work that was done by the Green Revolution in the 50s and 60s, develop new varieties of crops which have high yields and increased nutritional values. And as I said, all methods possible, classical breeding, marker-assisted selection, and genetic engineering, all of them have to be used. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves without sufficient yield, or we're going to have to use lands that we want to conserve. Okay. There are other possibilities though here. It's not just a question of increased productivity. It turns out that we're losing 30% of our crops due to crop diseases, vermin, and spoilage before it gets to market. So if we can somehow reduce this loss, we're talking about a big increase in the amount of food that will be available. We're not going to be able to get do away with all 30%. If we can go down to 20%, to 15%, dream 10% decrease in losses would be a tremendous advantage, that we would have more food with no need for increased productivity on the land. And a lot of this is due to lack of storage facilities, and so this is a problem that has to be dealt with. And lack of means of, as Debbie has told, lack of means of distribution. If you can't get the crops to the market, the farmers generally lose it because they eat what they can have, and the rest is lost because it's not moved to the market for others to use. So we have to help somehow build storage facilities and improve or develop efficient distribution infrastructure, work on disease-resistant crops, and develop technologies and infrastructure which will decrease losses of the crops, both pre and post harvest. Okay, but what about still? We got to go back to the 2 billion new inhabitants. Maybe we can get, say, 10-20% increase in efficiency of the use of what we already have. Food security is something that we just have to have. We have to be able to feed the people. But the question is, what about the environment? How can we deal with the problem of the environment? Another question that we have to ask is, what about regions that have already reached the carrying capacity of the land? Here we mean that they can't get anything more out of the land. There's lack of water, the land is in terrible conditions, it's deserts, the soils are poor, they're saline. How are we going to deal with these people that, even though if we bring them the best scientific and agricultural technologies, they just can't, if you don't have water, as Debbie said, you got to get the most per drop. But if you don't have the drop, you can't get anything. So are we going to have to deal with these people by charity? Or is there going to be mass migration to other countries, which we're seeing today in Israel, in Europe, in USA? We heard the lecture about the Germanic people that moved from Asia into Europe. This is mass migration that was due to lack of food, lack of land. We're seeing it today. In Israel, Europe, USA, people are moving. They want to eat. They have to eat. So there's other possibilities that we're going to see this mass migration. And if they don't migrate and they have to eat, they don't care about the ecology. They're going to want to utilize the forests, the preserves, and so we have to be able to increase productivity so that there's no need for them to start utilizing the unutilized regions of the earth that we need to have a good ecological and healthy earth. Okay, so what about the environment? One of the problems is that to feed people, we have to use agriculture. We have to use modern agriculture. Modern agriculture is water, fertilizer, and pesticide intensive. Another problem is that most of our water to get good yields has been already, most of the potable water has already been used. We're really at the end of our water supplies. And the excess pesticides and fertilizer that we're using to get these tremendous yields is polluting the air and the water. And we're on the verge of our environmental resources collapsing. But we have to have agriculture. We have to have modern agriculture. We have to feed the people. So what are we going to do? So we've got a dilemma here. Food security or environmental conservation and preservation. So is this really a dilemma, and is it one or the other? And I think there are possibilities. And here some are down here, and let's see what anyone sees these as possible solutions. We can cull the population like we do with deer when they get into a reserve and they get too high. We can try and limit population growth like they did in India, which led to the murder of the head of the government, but which has worked in China, which everyone said was a disaster and a horrible ethical solution. We can dictate food choices to the people. By this we can say, you eat cereal, you don't eat meat, and then we could grow enough cereal, but as soon as starting to eat meat, you can't do that. We can be laissez-faire and just tell everyone, do what you want, and we believe that things will work out somehow. And another possibility that people are saying, well, let's just stop immunization. Immunization in Africa is a disaster. All these people are surviving, and now they can't eat. If we stop giving them immunization, they'll die, and we'll go back to natural ecology. God help us if we go to this. These are all non-starters. But there are answers, and none is the absolute one, correct one. We have to try many. And the problem is that people have value systems, and they become very dogmatic on the solutions that they want to try. And I say, well, we have to look at every possible solution and use them all, because otherwise we're not going to feed the population. We have to feed them, and we have to find a solution that we preserve our ecological resources. So, is there enough land? Well, today, there's no problem. We see every day in the newspaper about episodal events of famine, drought, floods, war, and people are starving because of these. These are episodal events, and these charity can take care of many of them. Hopefully, wars will end, but if there's a famine or a drought for floods, it happens, and somehow the rest of the world has to come for that specific event and help. But we're talking about the broader picture. And we're talking about in 40 years of 2 billion more people. And I put it down here with all the 9 zeros so you can get a feeling of how much extra people we're talking really about. A big increase in population, and this is a problem. And the problem is that we're running out of arable land. First, when we look at the statistic, it doesn't seem that bad. Croplands take up 12.5% of the ice-free land. And pasture lands, we have more pasture lands than croplands, is about 26% of the ice-free lands. 38%. Oh. We got 60% left? No. Most of that 60% is deserts, mountains, tundra, cities, and ecological preserves. So we don't have much land. We've got to use the land that we have more efficiently. So what's in the Western world where things looks really good? We have lots of surplus. In the U.S. and Europe, 40% of the arable land is used for direct human food consumption. The rest is used for animal feed, fiber, and energy crops, biofuels. So there we have possibility extra land to play with. But we really don't have to worry about the West. The West is somehow able to handle its food needs, and we don't see very much increase in population in any case in the West, and so there's not much problem there. But they can, we have the West, the United States and Europe, Australia, Canada, China. Their farming systems is so efficient today they're even exporting food to the rest of the world. And here we see in this picture here percentage of land use that is for croplands. And so we see in the United States that these areas is mainly for non-crops, and the blue is non-crop, and the red is the high crop utilization. So we see in America there's lots of land that's not used for food crops. Same thing in South America, same thing through Europe, parts of the Asia. We see Africa, almost all the land that is cultivated is being used mainly for food, and all this gray area is deserts, mountains. It can't be used for growing crops. So we have areas that can be possibly converted to food if need be, and not used for other needs like biofuels. Okay, where is the major increase in population? This graph or color scheme of the birth shows that the main problem is in sub-Sahara Africa. In the United States and South America, there's 2 to 3 children. In North Africa, 2 to 3. In Europe and Russia and in China, they're already decreasing populations. Less than 2. But here is the main problem. We're talking about 4, 5, 6 children per family. And this is where there's the poorest agricultural systems available, which, as we saw before, most of the land that they have is being utilized for crops, but they're very low productivity. So somehow we have to be able to help these regions increase their productivity, and hopefully, if they increase their productivity, we'll see what's happened in Europe happening here also, because as countries increase in their productivity and food security and education of women, we see tremendous drops in birth rates. And hopefully this is what, if we can have success in improving the productivity of sub-Saharan Africa, we will then see the problem starting to solve itself. Okay, so can we feed these 2 billion more people? And I said, this we're talking, if we look at numbers percentage-wise, we're talking about 30% increase in population. And I already said, well, we have 30% waste. So if we can do away with the waste, we're well on the way. Want to do with that? Okay. Well, the problem is we're at a 70% increase. We're going to need a 70% increase in grains. And the reason for that is that people want meat. As there's increase in their standard of living, they want to eat meat, and meat demands high grain use. So we've got a problem here. Another confounder is biofuels. Biofuels is, in fact, the Manna Center had a special meeting on biofuels, and the problem is when you start doing all the mathematics, biofuels is going to use up an awful lot of land. And the question is food or biofuels. In the end, we're going to have to make the decision that biofuels are here for a short period. They're not the solution to fuels. We're going to have to feed the populations, and so this is going to have to be, in the end, market forces, social unrest will limit its use. This will take years, though. That will just jump on that. The question of water, as I said before, we have major problems of water. We've overused our water already. We have problems of distribution. And we have to somehow be able to provide the people with clean, potable water, both for agriculture and for civilian use. And a lot of this is questions of science, engineering, economics, policy, to be able to have sufficient clean water. And Israel is probably the best example of this, where we, years ago, utilized all our water sources, and now today we have enough because we're using it efficiently. We developed technologies that use it efficiently. We're doing reuse of all our water. I think 70% will hear about it later, either today or tomorrow. And we're doing desalinization. And so even with little water, we were able to make use of it and progress. So we already talked about this, what happens if we can't supply the foods. So we agree, we are one world, we are our brother's keeper, we are the guardians of the earth, and we have to be able to develop technologies that will allow all of us to become self-sufficient. And part of the solution is the optimal utilization of water and land resources, and I think these technologies are available, and the answer is more with less. And since Danny is signaling that I'm near the end, how, and I think here the big question is what Israel can do, and we, I think, are a great example where we've able to develop water, heat, and saline-tolerant crops, and we should try with superior nutritional properties, work in developing crop-resistant, disease-resistant plants, et cetera, et cetera. Since the time we can't go on. And we have to be able to somehow be involved also in helping the third world develop storage facilities and water infrastructure facilities. Others have to work on the question of distribution infrastructure. And it would be great if Israel could be involved also in collaborating and establishing research or working with research and developing centers in Africa, and together with the Israeli know-how, work with the farmers and the NGOs in Africa, and help them also develop more with less. And part of this we're going to hear about Moshav, which is an Israeli organization that is, we'll hear about it later, that works with Africa, and this, I think, is probably one of the best examples of what can be done. And of course, we've been major contributions: drip irrigation, water distribution, reclamation, desalination, all these things. Israel has been a major player, and we can work with Africa on this. Fertilizers, as Debbie said, the fertilizer placement technologies are also now going hand in hand with the question of water, drip irrigation, and so forth. Marketing, all these things are things that Israel can help. We are our brother's keeper. We can help solve the problem. In my opinion, we can save what we have left of our ecological systems, and we will be able to feed the world.
While we're running out of time and we all could use a coffee break, so instead of questions, I just want to say one thing, that the Manna Center is really the baby of Bernie, and we'd like to use this opportunity to actually recognize him for like 10 years of work in the Manna Center. And it says here that the Manna Center for Plant Biosciences at Tel Aviv University recognizes Professor Bernard Epel, the founding director of the center, for his vision and years of leadership.